Hello, my name is Stefany Castiblanco. I work at American Schoolway, one of the biggest English institutions in Colombia. And in this video, I'm going to share with you our ongoing research project entitled, Who Would You Prefer to Learn From? Conceptions and Misconceptions Around the EFL Teacher. You know that when people are starting their programs, they usually care about what their teachers will be like. They ask questions like, is my teacher a native speaker? Is he a foreigner? Has he taken any course or program to know how to teach? What about the methodology? Those are some of the most common questions, besides money, of course, and the places. But this ongoing research aims to analyze the information, those perceptions, those conceptions, in order to know how to highlight teachers' profiles. When learning English, who would you prefer to have as your teachers? The options are native speakers, meaning a person who comes from the United States, from England, Canada. The other option is speakers of other languages, meaning in this case, people who probably come from Italy, but they come to Colombia to teach English. Or Spanish speakers, who are people who speak Spanish as their mother tongue. In this case, we include people who can be from Colombia, so local teachers, but also people who come from Argentina, Venezuela, and other Latin American countries. And the last option is any of them. So the previous question is something we just asked to all our students at the institution. And well, we would like to know also your answer to this. In the next slide, we have some of the tags. So these are the most common types of teachers students identify. The first one, the native speaker. So remember, a person from the US, let's say. The second one, a non-native speaker, and in here we will gather foreigners, people from Italy, and people who are from Latin American countries. The other two tags are very similar. This time we have trained teachers, people who have studied pedagogy or education and know for sure how to teach, and on the other hand, untrained teachers. They can be, again, local teachers or foreigners, but all they have is experience, but not formal training. Now, in this situation, I want you to check what is that or what are those tags into the context. Let's imagine you are an art student and you need to learn some painting techniques, very specific. And after the process, you have to explain, but you will have to use English. And for this example, let's pretend you don't speak English as your mother tongue. And so, who would you like your teacher to be? Our options are an artist or an economist. Okay, I guess you already made your mind, right? But let's add two more details. The first one, our artist is actually a Spanish speaker, and that person got some training about teaching. But on the other hand, our economist is a native English speaker. Let's say this person comes from Canada, but this person has no training about how to teach. Now, did that additional information change your perspective, change your answer? Well, I wouldn't blame you if it happened, because the truth is that students say that it depends on the purpose, right? Okay, now let's check the 5 main aspects about our ongoing research project. The first part is the what. So remember, what we want to explore in this project is the conceptions and misconceptions about the EFL teacher that come from the students. Then the where. Well, we selected the 26 branches all around Colombia of our institution, American Schoolway, including Bogotá, Villavicencio, Cali, Medellin, among others. Why? Because we definitely want to determine what is the incidence of those teachers' profile, remember the tags we just mentioned before, and how that affects the students' preferences. And the how, well, we're going to use a mixed methodology research project, and in here, you're going to see a lot of statistics, right? But also some qualitative part. And finally, the who, well, in this research project, we had 50 students from all around Colombia, and we selected 55 EFL teachers. In the next slide, we're going to see the research question. So the motivation we had at the beginning. The first question is, what are students' conceptions about the EFL teachers? In here, we wanted to know, well, what is that they assume their teachers are like? And again, the tags emerge in that moment of the question. The second question was, what is the incidence of those EFL teacher profiles on students' preferences? So this time we wanted to know how is that students' perceived origin affected the type of classes they're having. And on the other side, we have the research objectives. We stated 3. The first one is identify EFL teachers' profiles and students' preferences. So again, connected to our question, we want to know characteristic and preference and stating a why. The second objective is to determine the incidence of those profiles, the specific features, on students' preferences. So they could say again, well, I like that my teacher is a native because blah, 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 right? We're going to see that later anyway. And the third objective is to analyze those conceptions, students' conceptions, and also misconceptions compared to the theory. So we're going to see a little bit what has already been said about the history of education and language itself, and we will compare also to the students' experiences. In the next slide, we check the main information of a research methodology. So first, we cover the EFL teachers' profiles. In order to collect this information, we use databases from the 26 branches of American Schoolway, and we selected 3 teachers from each of the branches. In here, we took into account the tags we mentioned before, but especially native, foreigners, and Spanish speakers. Next, we have the students' conceptions and misconceptions. In here, we apply a survey to 50 students of American Schoolway, and in here, we ask them questions about what their preference was like. They had to justify their answers, and we also explored a little bit their conception about skills and also preferences. Finally, in the students' evaluation of EFL classes, it was necessary to observe 55 teachers of American Schoolway. And those teachers, at the end of each observation, the people or the observer asked all of the students to give their opinion. So we could collect some information about how they felt, what was their perception of the class, and if they would like to know if they would like or not to have a class with that person again. The theory. So as I said before, we're going to compare their conceptions and misconceptions with the theory. So let's begin with the first statement that you can see. The ideal teacher of English is a native speaker. I'm pretty sure some of you might agree or disagree with this statement. But the truth is that it was something that was said in a language conference in Uganda at the University of Makerere in 1961, a long time ago, right? But they say 2 specific things in that Congress. The first one is that the perfect language teacher is a person who speaks that language as a native speaker. That was the first one. But then the second one is that a language should be taught monolingually, especially English, which means that their first language of the student is completely forbidden in the classroom. But of course, someone had to say something about this. So Philipson, the same year, he said, well, those 2 things are fallacies, right? So he said that there is a monolingual fallacy, which means, come on, we need to use a little bit more than English in our classes, and as well, the native speaker fallacy. So he said, come on, we have so many teachers around the world. Why only native speakers? Related to the first fallacy from Philipson, Stern also says that it is necessary to use the first language of the student in the classroom, right? So he, in 1994, stated 3 main reasons to use the first language of a student in the ESL classroom. So the first one is because we always need to start from our first language. It means when we learn a piece of vocabulary, we know the word in the new language, we connect it to an image, and it seems that it's clear. But our mind usually will recall also the word word and the image, right? So there is an inevitable connection between the two languages. The second reason is because our first language will give us a frame of reference for the system of the new language. Again, so if we say that in Spanish, for example, to create a sentence, I will need a subject, a verb, and a complement, so a person, an action, and a complement, I know that basis, I need to try to find something similar in the new language or to adapt that new system to the system I already have. And the third reason is because our native language and our native culture, they are bound together. So every time we learn a new language, we're also modifying our culture. And so we might change the way of speaking, our gestures, our body language, and other things. And in regards to the monolingual space, well, again, we need to use Spanish, but it doesn't mean that then all the class should be in the first language or, well, in Spanish. Stern says that there should be certain times during the classroom in which students are allowed to use Spanish, are allowed to use their first language, and they can get information that they probably couldn't get before. In the next slide, we're going to see how we support the second fallacy, the native speaker. So in here, Crunch in 1997 stated that, well, native speakers don't really speak that idealized and perfect or standardized language because actually they have their own version that is influenced definitely by their occupation, by their age, their social status, and also their location, right? Again, in here we have that common discussion that is, well, is the English that is spoken in Britain the only one that's perfect? But how about Spanish and English in other countries? So is that difference mean, or does that difference mean imperfection? Well, definitely no. And additionally, Thomas in 1999 said that the reason why those newly arrived students, those who are just in the process of starting their language learning, they think that the fallacy is true because sometimes they don't have really good experiences with the local teachers at their country. So they start thinking that only an external teacher, only a person who comes from another country will be able to help and to teach them effectively. But he stated an additional thing, that is that, however, when students start to become more acquainted with teachers, also with the language, so they have a little bit better of proficiency level, they start understanding that actually having a local or a person who speaks their language, it's a plus, it's an extra value because they have a common ground, right? They have to go through the process of learning the language, and therefore they say, well, this person might understand how I am feeling at this moment because I am not able to pronounce properly, because my listening is not really good. So in those specific situations, they think that those are the teachers who can understand better their situation. Now, we're going to move to the statistics. So, remember, we had the 26 databases from American Schoolway, and in here we selected, remember, 3 teachers from each of the branches. In some of the branches, we don't have all the tags, or let's say all the categories of teachers for their research. But let's begin with this part. In the nationality, we have 42% of teachers who are European, which means they don't speak English as their first language, but they have a good proficiency level, and therefore they came to our country to teach. The second part is the 15% of people who are Latin American. So in here we include teachers who are from Colombia, who are from Argentina, Mexico, Venezuela, and so on and so forth. We also have 35% of teachers who are English speakers, right? Native English speakers, and they come from countries in which English is their official language. Again, the United States, Australia, Canada, and so on and so forth. On the other side, we have the pedagogical training. So again, according to those, based on those teachers, we analyze also their pedagogical training. And we count on 53% of teachers who had studies, who had a degree program finished in the language. So they are fully certified. On the other hand, we have at 11% of teachers who have a TKT. And so it means that they have taken one of the models and they have also passed their tests. And we also have the TEFL or TESOL, teaching English as a foreign language, or teaching English to speakers of other languages. That's an 18%. But we also have 18% of teachers who have no pedagogical training. But again, they have experience, right? They have experience teaching in their country or in our country. But of course, it is important to mention that they have a compromise to formally support and certify their pedagogy knowledge. In the next slide, we're going to cover the surveys, right? Remember, we wanted to know their conceptions and misconceptions. So in here, we want to know that and their preferences specifically. So for the A1, A2, that are the basic levels according to the Common European Framework Reference, we have that 50% of our students prefer to have class with any of them. So they say, okay, I don't care if they have natives, local, it's fine, right? Then there is a 25% of basic students, beginners, who want to have class with native speakers, even if they don't speak English, if they don't speak Spanish, so they are not going to be able to use Spanish in the classroom. There is also an 18% of students saying that they would like to have classes with Spanish speakers because in that case they can ask questions and understand the topics. But then we asked them what was their preference about getting grammar explanations. At American Schoolway, we work with Pearson's material, Top Notch, and that book is based on content and goals, but some of those goals are of course connected to grammar. So we asked them, okay, when you have those type of lessons that are connected to grammar, who do you think that you understand better when having those classes? So again, the four options, any of them, native speakers, Spanish speakers, or foreigners. In here, surprisingly, they changed their mind, and now they think 50% of them prefer to have Spanish speakers, understanding that it's going to be easier for them to understand. But still, there is an 18% of students who will prefer to have native speakers because they consider that they are the ones who know the language in the best way. We also have 25% of students who say that anyone will be okay because this is something that didn't just apply for the first levels, but to all levels, and they think that what matters is not origin, but the knowledge. They have knowledge about the language. On the other hand, we also ask them what they consider best for their own level. So remember, the first question was about what they think, like according to their personal point of view, what was best for them. But in the next question, we ask them what they consider better for the whole. So in this case, they say 64% of these students say that they prefer Spanish speakers, right? So it is not really a surprise. They definitely know that what Thompson says is right. They will have the chance to ask questions, right? And we also asked other levels, so intermediate and advanced, what they consider was best for basic levels. And they say that definitely Spanish speaker in a 77%. No one said that native speakers will be a good option for those levels. But again, this is a matter of preferences. In the next slide, we're going to see the survey about B1 and B2. So those are what we will call in here the intermediate levels. So again, when we ask them their preference about teachers, they say in a 56% that any of them will be fine. They don't care about nationality. They just care about the quality of the teacher in the classroom. But they also have a 25% of students who prefer native speakers. They say that they need to train their listening skills. There's no better way to do it than by getting and being exposed to different accents. On the other hand, when we ask them what they prefer for grammar explanations, again, they say any of them in the majority, 63%, but 25% of them say Spanish speakers. Remember, this is an intermediate level, and therefore sometimes we don't get everything, right? So we might need a little bit of help from our first language. Then we ask them, again, what was best for their level. And they say that 31% of them would say, yeah, we want to have native teachers, right? And another 50% couldn't really decide between native and foreigners. So they were really conscious about the need of starting practices the language, and starting to practice and starting to strengthen their listening skills. And no one really wanted to have Spanish speakers in here, or not at least specifically, but when they say any of them in the 19%, we can kind of include those Spanish speakers. And in the last question, again, what other levels consider best for intermediate? Well, that was kind of equally divided, right? They would say that almost any person would fit for them. But again, it's a matter of perspective. Finally, in the next slide, we're going to see other advanced levels, B2.2 and C1. In here, we can definitely see that students really want to have exposed, really want to be exposed to both native and foreigners. And in a 50%, they say, well, any of them. Again, they definitely care about their quality, but not about nationality. On the other hand, when we ask them about the grammar explanations, 75% of them say any of them. So they definitely know that nationality doesn't make perfection, right, in here. And 25% of them will like to have native speakers again, but no one stated clearly for Spanish speakers or for foreigners. We also asked them what they consider was the best option for their level, and in a 75%, they think the best thing is to have a native speaker. This time, students also claim that it is important to know specific expressions, and usually natives are the ones who can provide more variety of vocabulary, expressions, idioms, so that it enrich their language as well. And 25% of them will think of natives and foreigners as an option, but no one will think that Spanish speakers can teach properly for their level. And in here we might confirm some of our fallacies, right? And the last question, again, what others consider best for their level, just 3% of them said Spanish speakers. And probably it was just a matter of confusion while completing the surveys, but it also can demonstrate that they say, come on, there's no reason to think that only a person who comes from the outside can teach, right? But again, it is important to acknowledge that a 39% definitely say that native speakers are a very good and necessary option for those levels. Also, in our survey, we include a very important question that was, what is that feature that they value the most on their teachers? In here, we were not really asking about native, local, no, it was just about the teacher itself. So, for the basic levels, and actually, well, for all of the levels, the question was about organizing 4 different characteristics or qualities of our teachers. The first one, ability to explain. The second one, their language level. The third one, strategies and activities. And the fourth one, cultural knowledge. So students were asked to rank those qualities or tags in order to understand what was best for them, what was more important, more relevant for them in the classroom. For the basic levels, they think that definitely the language level is very, very important. So they definitely want to have a teacher with a high proficiency level that can contribute to their process. But they also think activities and strategies are very important because beyond knowing the language, it is important to know how to transfer that information, how to display the information. And they also think the ability to explain is going to be important, that is connected to the activities. And finally, the cultural knowledge. But then when we move to the survey to the intermediate students, they definitely think that it's just language level what matters, and that ability to explain can kind of play a role in there, but it's not as important as the language level. And lastly, for the advanced students, they just value language level. So very little of ability to explain activities and cultural knowledge, it's important to them, or at least they didn't rank it as important. In the next slide, we're going to check some of the comments that we got from the class observation. So remember, 55 of our teachers were observed all around Colombia. And this is what our students said in those classes that were taught by native speakers. So some of them say, hey, I like classes with him because he's from another country, his accent is nice, and it is important to train our ear. It's something we're studying here. This is one of the first part. Another comment is that teacher was really good, so saying excellent teacher, he makes us talk a lot and we gives us the chance to practice. On the other hand, we also got not such a good comment, but topic was understood but not completely. So if we state those opinions in three main things, we have a importance of the accent, right? An importance of the chances to speaking, chances for speaking, and also that at times explanations are not completely clear. In the next slide, we're going to see the perspective of our students later or after the classes observed with non-native teachers, in this case speakers of other languages. So example, a teacher who's from Russia and it's in Colombia teaching English. So in here, they say, okay, we understand very well. She explains very well. The class is dynamic and entertaining. On the other hand, they say that those teachers provide a lot of extra resources, like they go beyond the book, we work with a course book. So they say that it's really nice that those teachers show them a little bit extra. And on the other hand, they say that their accent is appealing. Like their accent, it's a bit hard to understand, but they liked. So again, our three main opinions, or the three main concepts in those opinions are the explanations are really clear, that providing chances for extra practice, it's really important, and that accent again is appealing. And finally, about the perceptions and conceptions about our non-native teachers, in this case Spanish speakers, teachers from Latin America, after their classes. A student said, well, this person is dynamic, I can understand, and I feel very comfortable. This is something that it's really important to mention, and that is that these local teachers are giving the students a sense of confidence and comfort in the classes, which is really important to start growing in the process of learning. We also have that when they get corrections, they don't see it as something bad, because again, they can think, as Thompson said, that they know they have gone through the process, they can understand a mistake is not that bad, it's part of the process again. And we also have that this, according to the students, those teachers are very dedicated, they show a lot of passion about what they do, and they create interaction as well. So again, summarizing this information, we have dynamism in the classroom. We also have error correction is not penalized somehow. We also have that they definitely feel confident about speaking in their classes, and that a lot of them constantly provide a nice and entertaining class. And to conclude, we're going to see conclusions and implications of our research. So the first part is that teachers' origin does not determine their quality at all. That is something that our students could recognize in the classroom, because beyond saying, well, he's native, he's foreigner, he's local, they definitely understood that this is not a matter of origin. Later on, we also could analyze that training on education and pedagogy is essential to potentialize teaching skills and strategies, right? Students also value, well, they say that they value language level, but part of it is also the ability to transfer the information. And from the classes, the observations and their comments, we could also see that they definitely value the fact that they could understand because explanations were clear, the class was nice. So that's another aspect to take into account. Students still associate certain teacher profiles with quality, right? So going back a little bit to the origin, there might be still some students at American Schoolway and of course at many other places around the world who will still think that only native speakers speak the language properly. But again, it's our work to show them that is not that truth. Additionally, we have that in certain parts of a student's learning process, a bit of Spanish might be needed. Students know about that. Sometimes they don't want to acknowledge it, but it is true that when there's no prior knowledge and when topics are not that easy to understand, it is best to use Spanish or to use the first language of the student in the classroom. And as the last conclusion, we have that students demand exposure to a variety of accents to improve their listening skills. So it is our duty as language institutions to provide them with that variety. Of course, we might think that, well, having these native foreigners is not just about that, but also the material we use in the classroom can contribute to that variety. In the next slide, I will just show you the references. So again, thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to text me or to email me to scastiblanco@asw.edu.com. Thank you very much.